Hello and welcome. My name is Martha Williams, and I work with the 1440 Multiversity Workshop Programming Team, scheduling workshops and program development for 1440 Multiversity Campus, as well as 1440.tv. Today we are here with Dr. Richard Schwartz. Dr. Schwartz is a 1440 Multiversity faculty member. He's the founder of Internal Family Systems, which we'll hear more about in a minute or two. And he's a family therapist. And he is offering a webinar on Sunday, June 21st, called Using Internal Family Systems to Get You Through Isolation. So that's Sunday, June 21 on 1440.tv. Welcome, Dick.
Thank you, Martha. Great to see you again, and great to be a part of the faculty.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we love hosting you. I personally love your work. I find it fascinating. And I use it actually quite a bit in my own, mostly in my relationship with my husband. So let's hear more about it. Could you give us a short explanation of what Internal Family Systems is, and how did you come to call it by that name?
Yeah, I'll try my best. So I believe and have found over the almost 40 years I've been doing this that the mind is naturally multiple in the sense that we all have what I call parts, what other systems call subpersonalities or ego states, things like that. And that what we call thinking is really the interaction of these parts inside of us that are trying to figure out what to do that would be best for us, or we listen to different parts as we go through life, and that they're all valuable. This is what I discovered the hard way. It's a long story to that, but it turns out there aren't any bad parts, so all parts are welcome. But it's the natural state of the mind to have them because we couldn't do everything we have to if we just had one mind working on a problem. So we have all these talented little mini minds interacting inside all the time. But that traumas we suffer and what are called attachment injuries, so the result of bad parenting, shifts these parts from their naturally valuable states into roles that can be damaging and often makes them frozen in time during the trauma and forces them to take on the emotions and beliefs that came from that trauma, which we call burdens, that sort of attach to the part like a virus, like the COVID virus, and drive the way the part operates thereafter. So all these valuable inner beings, not all of them, but some of them can turn into parts of us that cause us trouble and get in our way. And so we've organized to think of them as just a part that makes us dissociate, or a part that makes us eat too much, or a part that makes us drink too much, or not even think of it as a part, but just an impulse. And so we tend to go to war against those impulses, not knowing that we're fighting with these very precious parts of us that are frozen in these roles. And some parts, who traditionally are called these inner children, these delightful, playful inner children, who are so vulnerable and open, and when they're not hurt, give us all the creativity and joy and playfulness and connection. They're the ones who get hurt the most usually by these traumas. They take on the burden of emotional pain or terror or shame, sense of worthlessness. And once that happens to that set of parts, we don't want anything to do with them. Before we loved them because they made us feel great. Now we want to get away from what they carry. We want to get away from those burdens. And so we lock them away, not knowing, thinking we're just locking away memories, sensations, emotions, and beliefs, not knowing we're actually locking away our juice in doing that. And they become what we call exiles inside. And when you get a bunch of exiles, then all these other parts have to jump into protective roles to keep them locked up and to keep the world from triggering them, because if you ever get triggered, you're going to be overwhelmed by their feelings, and then you can't function. So many people who have a lot of exiles have a lot of what we call protectors, whose job it is to manage your life so the exiles don't get triggered. So to manage how close you let people get to you, or how you look so that you don't get rejected, or you get, and push you to do a great performance so that you get accolades. So these we call manager protectors. And then there's another set of parts who, if you do get triggered, if an exile does get hurt, immediately go into action to pull you away from that feeling. So to get you away from the pain, they might get you high with some kind of substance, or they might find a way to distract you until the pain goes away. And these we call firefighters, because they're fighting the fire that came out of the exiles, the fire of emotion, exiled emotion. So that's what I learned as I was studying these inner systems, and I come from this systems background, family therapy. So I started not just studying, as my clients talked about parts, not just studying each part one at a time, but trying to understand the whole way the network inside operated. And the reason I call it internal family systems is because it often resembles the way families interact, the way these parts interact. And for example, one of family therapy's big insights was you can't take an acting out kid out of their family and tell them to cut it out. It just doesn't work. If that kid is stuck in a role inside the family that the family is either triggering all the time or supporting, and you have to change the family's ways of interacting that then frees this kid up to be who they're designed to be. And it turns out these parts are in the same position. They're forced into these roles they don't like, just like a kid in a family, and they're dying to be released from the roles, but they don't think it's safe because they feel like they have to protect you. So that's parts, but the bigger discovery actually was as I was exploring this, and I'm, as you said, a family therapist, so I'm trying to have parts get along with each other and have them talk to each other. Once I realized they weren't what they seemed, that the binging part isn't just a binging impulse, that it's actually a little protector trying to help out. And I was trying to get it to get along with my client instead of fight with it, instead of having my client try to get rid of it. And I would try to have these dialogues, and that would go okay, but occasionally other parts would interfere, and my client would get extreme toward the original, say, binge part, get very angry. And as a family therapist, it reminded me of family sessions when I'd try to get two people to talk to each other and a third kept interfering. And we learned to get that person to cut it out. So I started to get the interfering parts to step back, just step back inside, open up space, let these two talk. And all of a sudden, this other person would pop out and would start to relate to the parts in a way that was actually quite healing, and sort of knew how to be curious and calm and compassionate to these parts. And as I would do this process with other clients, it was like the same person would pop out, even in a totally different client. And after doing that enough times and seeing the same person pop out, I began to catalog the qualities that client would manifest, and that part, that person. And it would be curiosity and calm and confidence and compassion, and also creativity and clarity and courage and connectedness. So those are what we call the 8 C's of self-leadership. And turns out now, after almost 40 years of doing this and thousands of people doing it around the world, we can safely say that self with those C word qualities, that essence inside of us, self with a capital S, is in everybody, can't be damaged, and is just beneath the surface of these parts, so that when they open space, it emerges spontaneously and can take over the healing in a session, and can also operate in the external world as a leader and show your parts. They don't have to run things. So, how's that for? That's I usually take 2.5 hours to get through all that. So,
Great, great. That's great.
Great.
Are you hearing?
what?
Are you hearing
Hearing a what?
an echo?
No.
Okay, good. Maybe somebody can let me know if it's coming through as an echo on Facebook Live, and I'll put in my earbuds. It's a good segue because I've often thought about that self, that when the parts that are very protective and managing relax, as I understand it, when they're given voice, when they're given attention, when they agree to step back, that self has more space and takes more of a leadership role. It reminds me of spiritual practice and the idea of the inner self, the true self, the core self that we hear about through different wisdom traditions. Do you consider internal family systems to be a spiritual practice or to have spiritual roots?
I do now. I came to this. I come from a very scientific, atheistic, medical family, researchers. And when I first started exploring all this, I didn't have any kind of spirituality. But it was after running into self over and over in these clients, as I described, that I couldn't hold that position because the scientific view, which comes from developmental psychology and attachment theory, is that to have any of that inside, you had to have had a kind of parenting at a certain critical period in your childhood. And if you didn't get that, you're out of luck until you got it from some person in the outside world. And I was finding this in clients who had horrible, horrible childhoods. It couldn't have come from some parental relationship. And yet there it was. And so out of sort of frustration, I began looking other places to see if I could ground this observation, and had some students who said, well, maybe this is like Buddha nature, or maybe this is like Atman, or maybe this is like the Tao, or maybe this, and so on and so on. So I'd go and I'd read, and indeed, each tradition was talking about the exact same thing, basically, that I had stumbled onto. And so, yes, I now do believe that what I call self, with a capital S, is what all these other traditions have other names for. One difference is I stumbled onto a way to access it very quickly as compared to a lot of those other traditions where it takes years of meditating to get to. Turns out it's right there if you get parts to open space.
Do you get any pushback about the spiritual nature of the self within your therapeutic model from the clinical community? Do you get any pushback about that?
Not as much as you might expect. It's only been maybe the last 5 years that I've been out of the closet about it as much as I am. And IFS is very popular now, but it hasn't really found its way in hardcore academics much. That's where I would get the pushback. So I'm sort of bracing for that if that ever happens.
Got it. And Facebook viewers, if you have any questions for Dick Schwartz, please put them in the comments line and we'll share them with him. I'm interested to know, given all that's going on in the world, particularly in these last few months, we could easily isolate it to the last couple of weeks. I imagine that a lot of us are feeling a lot of different things. There's a lot of parts that are up: fear, anxiety, this uncertainty, overwhelm.
Yeah.
How do you speak for a part of yourself when so many different parts of you are activated or triggered? Can you speak for multiple parts at one time? Do you have to kind of take the most pressing one and speak for that part?
Yeah, it's not so much even speaking for them, but you are all triggered, and these parts tend to what I call blend with you, so that they can totally take over. So if you are really scared about the virus, then that really scared part, you're often in the habit of just feeling its fear all the time. Or other protectors come in to distract you or to push it back down. But you're in that battle all the time of either being in it or fighting it away. And that's the way most people are. And so this is a bit different in the sense that you, like mindfulness, you separate from both the part itself, the scared one, and also the parts that are fighting with it.
Mm.
And you can notice them mindfully, but add the idea that these are parts of you that are at war and that need your help as a leader. And so you're noticing them, you're a little separate from them. As you separate from them, you'll start to access more of these C-word qualities. And as you do that, instead of just mindfully observing them, which is the mindfulness practice, you begin to interact with them from this place of calm and curiosity and even compassion, getting to know what they're so afraid of, or getting to know the ones that don't like the fear, and just listening to them is the first step.
Mm.
And hearing why they're doing what they're doing and where they're stuck in the past. Because a lot of times, and it's been a boon for my clients because it's bringing up all kinds of stuff from their past this period of time. I mean, it's bringing up realistic fears too, because people are losing their jobs and their relatives are dying, and there's good reasons to be afraid. So I'm not trying to say that it's all about your childhood, but there are also parts of my clients that we're getting to now because they're so triggered that we couldn't have gotten to otherwise. So, and then we can follow what I call the trailhead of that emotion to see where the part is stuck in the past. And there's a process by which you can actually have the client go into that scene and be with that child in the way he or she needed at the time, and then take him or her to a safe, comfortable place. At which point, most of these parts are willing to unburden, to release the extreme beliefs and emotions they carry, at which point they'll transform back into being a happy inner child. So this is a model of transformation rather than a model of just notice and accept what is. This is no, use your compassion to go to what is and embrace it and heal it.
I find that very hopeful, that idea that we can tend to this, part of ourself that got wounded, traumatized so long ago, that can still be quite active. And yet when we tend to it with compassion, some of that can be released. And then you get all the great, juicy stuff of that younger.
That's the other thing, yeah. Because when you exile them, you lose access to all those great qualities they have. So you don't have nearly the level of creativity or playfulness or any of those that you do once they're healed and they're back in your life.
All right, we have a question from Sarah. Sarah says, I'm a trainee child therapist, and I'm wondering if IFS is something that can helpfully be used with children. Can it be helpful?
Yeah, Sarah, I don't work with kids myself a lot. I used to. But there's a whole group of IFS child therapists, and there's a book on how to do it on our website, which our website is ifs-institute.com. So in the store on our website, there's a book on how to use it with kids.
Excellent. All right. Well, that pretty much wraps up our Facebook Live today with Dr. Richard Schwartz. He will be offering a webinar on 1440.tv on Sunday, June 21, 9 to 11 a.m. Pacific time. So for East Coasters, that's 12 to 2 p.m. The title is Using Internal Family Systems to Get You Through Isolation. And there are only a handful of spots left. So this is one of our more popular webinars. Only a handful of spots left. So please don't delay if you're interested in learning more and hearing more from Dick Schwartz. And are you doing any interactive work in the webinar, Dick?
Yeah, I'll be doing some experiential exercises, and ideally there'll be Q&A discussions too.
Excellent. All right, so 1440.tv is where you can find this webinar, as well as a number of other webinars and resources, free material, free content, all there to support you through this difficult time we're having. And again, I thank you, Dick, for making yourself available. I thank you for the work that you share, this internal family systems work that you share with the world.
Thank you, Martha. Happy to do it.
And for being
Always
part of
great to
1440.
Yeah, great.
All right, be well, everyone.